Good day, everyone. How are you today? I hope you're doing fine now. Last meeting we discussed about lesson one. It's about the aggregate demand, and today we are going to discuss about the components of aggregate demand. So, are you ready? Let's start. In this lesson, you are expected to be able to enumerate the different components of aggregate demand, and you are expected to be able to analyze and appreciate the impact of the components of aggregate demand to the economy. We economists believe that total purchase of all consumers of a country is equal to what is produced of that particular country. Therefore, aggregate demand is equal to the gross domestic product of a country. What is gross domestic product? Gross domestic product is equal to the total output, total product produced, total product produced or total goods and services produced by the economy within the territorial boundary of that country for a specified period of time. That is gross domestic product. So, what are those included in computation of the gross domestic product, which is equal also to the aggregate demand? So, in this juncture, we are going to discuss the components of GDP, which is also the component of the aggregate demand. And first component of GDP slash component of aggregate demand is the consumer's spending. Consumer's spending refers to the expenditure or expenses incurred by the household in purchase final goods and services intended for final consumption, not for investment. Again, consumers spending refers to the consumption incurred by the household to purchase the final goods and services intended for final consumption. And if you talk about consumers spending, we must consider two important terms. This is the consumption, which refers to the consumption, again, the consumption, the expenditure or the spending of household. And this accounts for two-thirds of the total output of the economy. Again, this accounts to two-thirds of the total output of the economy. And the other term we must remember if we talk about consumer spending is the disposable income. Disposable income is part of the gross income minus the taxes. So anything of your income after deduction of your taxes is considered to be your disposable income, which is part of your gross income available for consumption. The second component of GDP or aggregate demand is the investment spending by the business sector. This refers to the expenditure incurred by the business firms during the time they want or they undergo business expansion. Like, for example, they buy machinery, equipment intended to increase productivity of the firm, as well as the building of other building, the other establishment intended for storage. Again, investment spending, this refers to the expenditure by the business firm for intended to increase productivity of those firms. So that's investment spending by the business sector. The third component of GDP slash aggregate demand is the spending by the government on goods and services. And if we talk about government spending, we are talking two things. First is the public spending. This refers to the building of bridges, roads, other tangible projects of the government, which we can see, we can touch. So that's public spending. And the other one is the administration or administrative expenses. This refers to the expenditure incurred by the government in spending on salaries of employees in defense. For example, if the government of the Republic of the Philippines, by, shall we say, materials or anything intended for defense, military equipment, so that's for administrative expenditure or administrative expenses. Then we have to take note that cash transfer from the government to the household is not uh, part of the accounting for the GDP under the government expenditure. What are these money transfer or current transfer from the government? These are the cash grants like poor peace, the MCCPIP benefits, the social amelioration program or the SAP or the ayuda during the onset of the pandemic, and other money transfer from the government to the household. These are not part of the accounting for the government expenditure for the accounting of the gross domestic product, because this has nothing to do with the aggregate demand. It's just a transfer of fund from the government to the household sector. The fourth component of the GDP is the net export or the disposable income. Why net export? Export refers to the products or goods and services we sell to the other economy or sell to the other economy or to the other country. For example, we export bananas, we export labors, we export uh, mangoes. So that forms part of our export products and services. However, we also import products and services. So imported products are just, for example, your gadget, our gadget, the Samsung, the iPhone, the rice from Vietnam, and the experts from the other country. If we lack of scientists or scientists of that specific field, then we hire from other countries. So that's imported services. That is why net export, because gross export minus import. And disposable income, again, this is part of our income minus taxes. Disposable income is part of our income which is available and intended for consumption. And the last component, the fifth and the last component of GDP slash aggregate demand is the spending on goods and services from other country. How does this differ from the export? Again, spending on goods and services from other country. How does this differ from export? Spending on goods and services from other countries refers to the consumption of foreigners here in the Philippines, which are not considered as part of domestic consumption. For example, the people, personnel, officer, or the ambassador of a foreign country living in the Philippines, their consumption of our products are not considered part of local consumption. Why? Because again, GDP is computed on total product produced, goods and services produced within the territorial boundary of an economy. Again, within the territorial boundary of the economy. Then, remember, an embassy is not part of the territory of the Republic of the Philippines, whether these embassies are inside the Philippines, because embassies are considered part of the territorial domain of that country. So for example, the United States of America's embassy in the Philippines is not part of the territory of the Philippines. It's part of the territory of the United States. Same thing with our embassy in the foreign land. Our embassy in Japan, in the United States, in Europe are considered territory of the Philippines. Therefore, that is why the consumption of goods and services of the people living in these embassies are not part of the local consumption of the Philippine economy, but considered as part of GDP under this category, spending on goods and services from the other country. So let's recall five parts or five components of GDP slash the aggregate demand is the first, consumer spending. Second, investment spending or investment expenditure by the business firm. Third, government spending. Fourth, net export. And fifth is this, the spending on goods and services from other country. These all comprise the formula of computing aggregate demand, which is also the formula of computing gross domestic product. AD or aggregate demand is equal to consumption plus I or investment expenditure by the business sector plus G or government spending plus Y minus T or income minus taxes, or aggregate demand is equal to consumption plus investment expenditure, which is I, plus government spending, which is G, and plus X minus M, or the net export. I hope I make myself clear. If you have some questions in your mind, please don't hesitate to message. Just send me private message or message at our group chat, or you can comment your message or your questions in the comment box. Don't be shy, just open up, let us clear things. Again, come and approach me and I will help you understand the lesson. That's all for today. Keep safe, everyone. Good day.